folks. Welcome inside the Parisi Palace, high above 3773 East Broadway. This is a live edition of the Jake Feinberg Show, coming on Power Talk. Thank you so much for making us part of your day today. And without further ado, it's a high honor to bring on a cat who plays music. He found his purpose in life, really, playing music as a healer. And he has been in a myriad of different settings. But I think that from his upbringing, he recognizes that probably music and rhythm and melody and harmony and just the collective experience supersedes any kind of man's view of God or any kind of monotheistic religion or any kind of dogma. It keeps him young, it keeps him healthy, and I look forward to learning more about him. Pipe Ceballos, welcome to the Jake Feinberg Show.
Hey, Jake. It's good to be here, man. It's been a while.
Well, it's been too long. It's such an honor, man. Growing up, did you know any medicine men or people that you saw heal people through music?
Not really.
Or anything that comes into your, like anything that you recognize that it was just beyond, it was a cosmic thing that you recognized that.
Well, it's a little, I was really, really young when my cousin, I think it was like my 4-year-old birthday or 5th birthday, something like that. And I had an older cousin, and he gave me as a present we shared the same birthday, and the same day, and he gave me as a present Quiet Riot's Mental Health.
That is insane. How old was he? Was he same age?
He was older. No, he was older. Wow. He was older. He was a bit older. The story goes that he was kind of like the guy that introduced me to rock and roll. Mm-hmm. I remember, he was older than me and my brother. His name is Francisco Pacho, and I went to his house once because we lived really close by in the same neighborhood, and we would get together a lot to we would do camping in the backyard in tents and stuff like that. And so he was the older cousin, so he would kind of take care of us in a way, and also, show us the ropes.
Absolutely, dude. I dig, man. He was like an old the elder.
The elder, yeah. I mean, he wasn't that much older, but yeah, at least I'm pretty sure he's at least 7-8 years older, something like that. And the thing that first blew me away was I went once to his house, and he had this Kiss movie, and I was like watching this thing, and if I would, I don't even remember much, but I remember that they were like aliens or something, right? That's
sure.
The kind of premise on the Kiss thing. I don't remember very well, but that thing just totally I remember having that first moment and being like, holy shit, what is this? This is I felt like an immediate connection with rock and roll there. And and then that year for my birthday, he shows up with the Mental Health record. And I remember my mom, because before this, it was like the Smurfs record,
Which is, there's nothing wrong with Mr. Rogers and the Smurfs, but yeah, this is a different kind of...
Well, I don't know if you're familiar with the cover, but there's this guy with the helmet, with
the Quiet Riot one? Yeah, I know that one.
Yeah, so...
It's a different bag, yeah.
Yeah, Mom... It's and I remember it starts with the metal, dang, and so my mom was pretty initially frightened, but I was a good kid, but that's kind of the closest thing of a spiritual connection I had or heal. It immediately, I was a very shy kind of reserved kid, and that just kind of entered, I entered to the warp zone or something. It immediately was shit, what the hell is this, And I was really
and you
young.
became completely fixated on it.
I got, and you must understand, this is like early 80s, Barranquilla, Colombia. Like this is a very small town. Like rock and roll isn't, the main thing there at all. Like I was a weird kid. I had me and my close buddy growing up. We were the weird kids because we liked, Motley Crue and shit. So
it's so fascinating. So I want to be clear. Like, I asked you about the Medicine Man stuff just because, I mean, Colombia, like, is not Brazil, but I just, what is the significance, like, not from the corruption or from the upper crust of society, but in your mind, like, the indigenous music of Colombia, like, can you just talk to the audience about what you think that is? Because you're talking about like Western, like rock and roll, but
I mean, that was what I felt connected with. But there's this whole other thing that, like even when I was like playing with Dan and Luke and stuff, and I would play, he would be like, "What you're playing?" I was like rock and roll, but it's like he would be like, "That's just some like Colombian rock and roll shit."
Oh, I love it. Hold on, I just want to stop you right there. You're telling me that Luke Paquin, Dan Horne, and Pipe Ceballos was a trio?
We had the Street and Babe Shadow. There's one.
Was that up in San Francisco? Where I mean, I don't want to get off on this tangent right now.
That's in L.A. Los Angeles.
So anyway, go ahead. All of a sudden, you're playing the indigenous rhythms of your homeland.
Well, I was kind of, but not. It was rock and roll. It's rock and roll. It's rock and roll to me. But they see they feel the Colombian vibe in there, and there is, because where I'm from, Barranquilla, first of all, they have, a lot of the music that is native from there. It really comes from Africa, Right. It's like cumbia is a big influence on me indirectly. And the traditional cumbia in Colombia is like very percussive. It's like, it literally is just like different drums with the animal skins on it, and then there's like a thing called a gaita, which is like a flute, and it comes with like a dance and some costumes, and it's actually pretty beautiful, like tradition, if you get to the real roots of it, and It definitely influenced me indirectly initially. When I was a kid, when I was a kid, I wanted no part of it, but again, but then growing up, I studied with my teacher that taught me drums. He was like a pioneer in infusing all those rhythms into the drum kit.
What was his name?
Einar Escaf.
Wow, dude.
And he's and like there is this thing that is just naturally in me because it's the typical music that I grew up, it's what you would hear everywhere. So even if I was kind of at the beginning, I don't want to say a hater, but I wasn't that into it.
Dude, we're the same age. I mean, it was not, we're like Gen Xers or something, like it was, we were rock babies.
Well, yeah, and it had a lot to do with like, people were like people were like drunk and shit and like carnival, and like to me, I was attracted to distortion, but
no, I don't want to. This is the only reason I ask, because it's part of my trip and I love talking about it. But I mean, as you've sort of cultivated,
I mean, going back to it, like what I mean is like it's very powerful stuff, and
really
like
powerful.
Now, you learn to really appreciate it eventually as I grew older, and when I studied it with Einar, I really got into it, and and that was in my my late teens kind of thing. So I really got to appreciate it.
Can you talk about specific? I'm going to ask you about a few things. When you started to incorporate those rhythms on the kit, did it improve your dynamics and your tone at all?
Yeah, Yeah, and you actually see it in a different way, because what starts happening is, traditional rock and roll, you're hitting like the snare drum and the 2 and the 4 and the kick and it's just like
Sure,
the
exactly.
downbeat kind of.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, when you're doing like the cumbia stuff, your accents are in a different place, so you naturally feel some heavy accents that even if you're playing a rock and roll beat, your intention and your intention just kind of seems different, even though even if you write it out, it'll technically be the same thing, but once you play it, you're like maybe just accenting stuff in a different place, and it definitely improved my dynamics. It definitely improved the way of like seeing the instrument itself.
And like in terms of like how hard you hit the drums too, like did you find you didn't, I don't know, like to me, like Quiet Riot, I mean, all those bands, like they're iconic, but it's heavy, it's hard.
Yeah.
They're pounding, and like I always, the guys I love the most in my peer group, there's this way to finesse the power.
Yeah, and I think that I think more than actually the influence of the Latin stuff or anything, I think it's more a thing that you learn as you mature.
Absolutely, absolutely.
It's just the type of thing that you're like, well, maybe I was wrong. Maybe you don't need to, and then you realize that the drums sound nicer when you don't pound them, when you don't hit them that hard,
Can you talk about the musical experiences that you had after you studied with your teacher? And how fundamentally, because I think also, I mean, in isolation, I don't know if you're really going to ever be able to determine if you're maturing or not. But then you get into a situation where you're playing with cats, and you're like, "Wow, I've changed." I mean,
I mean, that's pretty much everything. When you're starting to play with other people and you learn to listen,
right.
and because there's it's all under that experience. It sounds kind of like, oh, I'm old or whatever, but it's not about that. It's amount of experience, and once you start playing with people, you then start realizing, oh, it's not about me anymore.
It's about the conversation and and getting out of your own way to a degree.
I learned a beautiful phrase from Luke Paquin, which was,
"Oh, please hit me."
There's no I in rock and roll, and there is no I in rock and roll. So once you start playing and you start listening to what everybody's doing, and you start kind of like, and that's where the real maturing comes. It's when you realize that it's not about what you play. And I bring back Luke and I bring back Dan, because with Dan something real wonderful always happened to me, which felt like I wasn't even playing. Like the bond with him as a bass player is and the drums is so like, I don't know what, it's just weird,
dude. No, it's not weird. It is completely, I would say that any drummer that plays with Horne feels that exact same way. It's rooted in some kind of absolutely filthy, nasty, percussive weave, and it's always there. And to feel like you can, I remember when I interviewed Horne the first time, he talked about in Palo Alto, Max Roach, the great drummer, showed up for a tutorial or clinic, and he's like, "Who plays bass here?" And Horne stands up and gets on the bandstand, starts to swing. And he's like, wow. He's like, this is really what it's supposed to feel like. I'm not really even doing anything. I'm just off the ground. And so and it's just, to me, like, believe me, he feels the same way playing with you. I mean, it's some kind of, it's hypnotic is all I can say.
Yeah, there's just this unspoken bond that and it literally kind of happened since day one. Like the day I met him, we became just like, but like, it was like, oh, I like this guy. Oh, this guy likes, it was just like, it's just been smoothing,
He's changed honestly, I mean, I can say this definitively, like, It's just past the 4-year mark of meeting them or meeting Horne and seeing Grateful Shred for the first time, but also now it's beyond comprehension. There's just part of it's also just like the way he carries himself, the kind of person that he is.
He's just
because there's a lot of cats that are nasty players, but they're actually assholes. So
he's just a good guy.
He's just a decent person, man. And that's the kind of people that I want to. That's my tribe, and you're part of that too. I mean, Pipe. How much? This is the other thing I wanted to ask you about with Colombia. Like,
yeah,
the idea is, because it's kind of been part of my trip. With the diaspora and all the slave trade that came from Africa, to Cuba and all these places. A lot of those tribes, they tried to keep their heritage and their culture embedded, and ultimately words like we call like Santeria, for instance. Like some kind of that's not an African word. That's a Latin word. Everything's been co-opted by Western forces, slave trading forces. I wonder about the if there were populations, or if you've become curious about the remaining populations of people that maybe came over the lineage of the slave trade, where those rhythms and that culture is still embedded, because in the Western complex, you hear about Colombia and, great cocaine or, great, but coffee. A lot of great coffee. Thank you. It's not, I'm stumbling over myself. You take the road. Are you curious? Are there still indigenous tribes? Yeah. Can you talk about?
There's. The indigenous people were there before any of us.
Of course.
Actually, my brother has this. In the last few years, there's this jungle mountain that's called La Sierra Nevada, and it's very beautiful because it's like a jungle mountain, and they grow coffee there, and as you go down to the mountain, it actually ends up being in the ocean. So it's like jungle and beautiful Caribbean ocean, and my brother actually has Umuke coffee brand that he's starting to sell in the U.S. actually, because he lives.
How do you spell the brand?
Umuke.
Wow.
And his whole trip and his whole vibe is how this part of this region of the world and the indigenous, he goes there and talks to the indigenous people. These are all indigenous people that he gets the coffee from, and they are they call that, they claim that that's the they claim that they are part of, like, pretty much the heart of the world, in a sense that they really think that what they try to, they really work on trying to preserve that area, because the
it's
evil
just
minds of the world is like, every time you see something pretty, it's like, when I moved to Mexico, it's close to 10 years now, and the first time I went to, like, you've heard of Tulum, and like the first time I went there, it was very few, like, undeveloped, and like last time I went there was like, holy shit, they just ruined this.
I know, man. And they do that in Africa. They're doing that in the motherland, man.
They do that everywhere.
All the wildlife getting killed, pushed off.
And it's just like this irresponsible tourism kind of thing, and
it was greed and money, and I love that idea of that they are the heartbeat, or they consider themselves the soul of the earth, the roots of the earth, because their bloodline is like that, and they've tried to not just live off the land, but preserve it as well. I mean, can you talk, like, how much, first of all, you and Eric Deutsch need to get a duo together, a band, organ.
Well,
you guys are just, go ahead.
I just spoke to him a few days ago.
Oh, beautiful.
I just spoke to him. We did a project. We were musicians in a project for this band here in Mexico called Phobia, and we played on their MTV Unplugged like 2 years ago or something like that. And he actually went. He actually did some of the touring with them. I didn't end up going on the. I only did the TV and the record because I toured with another band called Zoe, so there was a conflict of scheduling. But I keep in touch with Eric. He's a great guy.
Well, what I wanted to ask you about is like, because it took a minute just to get our schedules coordinated, and I wanted you to just talk about, like being an accomplished professional musician. Ultimately, are you able to sing for your supper on the bandstand, playing the music that you love, or are you finding ways to offset the lack of live opportunity, if there is, by producing and or picking up gigs that maybe it's not your favorite music, but it's good bread?
Well, you know what? It's been
a combination.
Well, and it's been a long road. I mean, I
for everybody, bro.
I definitely think I paid my dues, and like everybody, I don't think I'm pretty happy where I'm at, but I'm not necessarily satisfied yet. You know what I mean?
Absolutely, and that will always be the case.
There's always that hunger, but I do consider myself pretty lucky. I think any musician or artist that could put bread on the table doing their art in any which extension you would think, but if you manage to do that, that immediately makes you successful, because you're like in a very low percentage of people who can do that.
That's right. And you're doing something that not just passionate about, but it's your purpose. So it's just the most invigorating thing. But that's so hard to. Where would you? Yeah. So go ahead. I mean, talk a little bit about the project. Yeah. I mean, how do you sing for your supper?
So basically, I for the last around mostly 10 years, I've been part of this the live ensemble of this this Mexican iconic band called Zoe.
Yes.
Or Zoe, Z-O-E. And it's one of those things that just kind of magically, luckily happened for me. I met those guys while I was still living in California, and we became close friends. And it started with whenever we're in tour in California, Pipa's band would open, and Dan and I played with open for Zoe.
Dude, do we have recording? Is there audio of that? I gotta hear this band. This you, Paquin, and is it just a
the Street and Babe Shadow.
Dude, I mean, this is you're blowing my.
There's two albums. I wasn't on the first one. I'm on the second one. The first one, they didn't have a drummer, and now and then I'm a drummer, and it's like, we keep talking about doing something at some point.
Dude, we need to get Pipe back for a little bit of a residency in the States and get you and Horne and Paquin back.
I keep on talking to them about doing another
we need you, dude. You're a barrel of love, man. I mean, so you met this band. How did you meet them,
these guys? And well, it was just one of those things that
cosmic kind of thing.
Well, yeah, no, like their drummer now, who ironically is the guy who gets me in the band, we become really close friends because I play with him like another drum kit / keyboard / percussion. I'm like the weird dude. But it's fun. It's a lot of fun.
It is fun, yeah.
I met him when he was in another band, and they stayed at my place when I lived in LA when they were recording the album, and him and I bonded really good, and we became close friends. And then that thing happened that every time they would go to the US, that would be like, oh, Pipa's band should open, whatever that band is.
Just throw it together, dude. Get Horne out there, and we'll be all right.
It literally, I think I played with like 4 or 5 different bands.
Oh, I love it.
And then there was a time when they were touring the U.S. about a little bit over 10 years ago, where they had this this guy that had a problem with his visa, and they were like, well, do you want to do this tour? And I'm like, sure. And I've been playing with them ever since. So it's been, it's been great because I've been able to tour all over the place. I'm really close with all the guys. They're great people. They're good friends. And that just paved the way to in order for me to do other stuff. And I started, I have a small indie label with them called Discos Panoram. And we put out all sorts of stuff. And then I started producing acts that we would put out there. And, all of a sudden, I guess my whole, because I lived in California for 15 years. So all that way of doing music translated into having some sort of unique perspective down here in Mexico, and it's great because could you articulate that perspective? Because you're bringing something different, obviously. Well, yeah, because if you think about it, I'm a guy that grew up in Colombia, then lives in California for 15 years, and now is in Mexico. So, and in a way, even though what seems to be, for a lot of people, like mainstream, like going back to the kid stuff, and I listen to like Motley Crue and like, because that's, I'm never really like, that's, hey man, the moment I saw Tommy Lee go in circles, I was like, that's what I want to play. It's like, really I really respect it, man. It puts you on your path. It's absolutely. Yeah. Do you think that Zoe, that band, do you still feel that it's a living, breathing organism that is, the music is still growing, or have you reached a point where it's still go ahead. It's still going, and it still grows, and and aside from the band itself, I get it still grows. The band keeps putting out records, and they they evolve. So if you it's a band that's been together for 20 plus years at this point. So, well, I want your personal opinion, not with that band, but just your personal opinion about the idea, because I'm very hung up on this. Is like, you get and easy for me to say, I'm not in a band. I'm not in the band business, but it's like you get a following, and then all of a sudden you feel this, I don't want to say pressure, but that there's an expectation you're going to placate to the audience by playing the tunes that they love. No, I think that, go ahead. Go ahead. That's always going to happen. You have to play the hits at some point, when you're a band of that amount of trajectory. Like, there's no escaping that, in a sense. Yeah, you can't just go off and play, your own. But I'm just saying, that, to me, you guys have to get yourself off it also, But we also, yeah, exactly. But we still, in every tour, we still play the record from that we play the most songs is always the newer record. You know what I mean? You always play 5 songs or 5, 6, 7 songs of the newer record. So that way you keep on keeping yourself somewhat fresh, and you still get to choose a couple of, songs that you're like, well, this was for me. Right. And because you need that. You need that to keep it going and to be excited and to do that. And to be quite honest, I don't necessarily get bored of playing, the quote unquote hits. I think it's all really in the attitude. I'm always really excited to play. Man. Oh, you're nailing it, dude. You're nailing it, dude. I'm really always excited to play. Like and you get your time off, and then, like we haven't been playing for we have a few months that we've been off, and I've been working hard in the studio, producing other acts and stuff. And in a couple of weeks, we're going to start rehearsing, and I'm like actually excited about it, and it's one of those things that I'm like, I'm excited. I'm sure. I think if you really know that, again, I feel really blessed and like really lucky to do this. I come from a small town where rock and roll is not really. Dude, this is one of the most. There's a lot of amazing stories that I've chronicled
from cats that have lived overseas, and a lot of them were from Europe, and there was like Radio Free America, so they were very much tuned into, at the time, jazz, American popular music. But for you, I mean, the town, is there a couple thousand people? I mean, how many?
No, I mean it's like the third or fourth biggest city in Colombia, but it's still. Let's look up how many. I'm gonna look. Yeah. I'm gonna look that info up right now.
It is it's amazing that the fusion of rock and roll and that stuff just sort of came into.
I was also lucky. Like, for example, my dad had a close friend that had a band that was like a rocker. So as a kid, I would get to go to my dad's friend's house, and he would play with his older, which was also an awesome experience, because right off the bat, you discover that the whole music thing breaks any sort of age barrier. Like all of a sudden you're 15 years old, but you're friends with a 40-something or maybe 50-year-old dude that plays rock and roll, and there is no
well, if nothing else, you have to learn how to communicate with people that are older and younger than you. I mean, I think that's fantastic.
Yeah, and that and on the flip side, now I produce kids that are between 18, 20, and you realize that. And that's what keeps, you nailed it at the beginning, saying keeps you young, and hey man, look it up. Look at any other. Have you seen a photo of Ringo, man?
No, that's what I wanted to ask you about, Pipe. Because just for your own personal experience, I mean, I think this is I just wonder about how you deal sometimes, I mean, with the idea of, because I mean, the natural high of playing live night after night after night.
Absolutely.
And how you've learned.
It's priceless, man.
Well, it's a lot of subsets questions in this, but I guess one, can you talk about how the music has kept you healthy, how it cultivates your spirit, and then ultimately, have you recognized, I have in my work, that your work will have an impact in this life, but it will live on long after you've left this planet. And there's a legacy there. It's not an ego thing. It's the idea of saying, I do so many interviews, this, and my hope is that my daughter's generation or future generations, someday it'll spark somebody else to come up with some kind of ingenious thing to do on their own. And I just wonder if these are things because to me, that's humbling, and then you get out of your own way. And maybe that's the question, is how have you learned to manage your ego?
Well, I see ego a little bit kind of like cholesterol, there's a good one and there's a bad one.
Yeah, dude, I like it, man.
Because
ego's, you need to have it, but go ahead.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, man, it's you need, it's, the yin yang and everything. There has to be a balance, and you have to, there's a moment when you're playing and you get that high and you feel like the shit and you're cool and you're feeling like, I'm fucking good. I'm doing my shit. I'm entertaining people. I'm giving my soul. I'm spilling the stuff, but I'm doing a good job and I'm good. I'm good at what I do.
Right.
And there's moments where you're insecure about it. And there's moments where you're like, I think you just have to keep yourself in check, but there's a part of you that needs to know that I battle a lot sometimes with some sort of insecurities of knowing
absolutely,
hey,
dude.
Me too,
mm-hmm.
I battle with those, but then there's a point where being like, well, I've also managed to accomplish quite a bunch of shit.
That's right.
For a small town boy, you know what I mean? It's
well, and it's just the beginning. I mean, there's so many more chapters. It's like the idea of the one word that keeps coming to my mind is gratitude.
Yeah. And I think that's basically it. I feel like that's, I'm not gonna say that there hasn't been, we all have dark moments.
Dude, I was having dark
periods.
moments yesterday. It happens on a daily basis in some ways.
Exactly, and we just have to work on I think what we I think it all really comes down to trying to be the best human you can, and like music is just kind of like a channel for that in a way. Um, and within music, there's the ego thing, and then there's the also part of like, well, what am I, you know? There's such a passion involved into it, and there's I mean,
it's so deep. It's beyond. I mean, it's so freaking. Pipe. We're gonna have to do set two because I got to go pick up my kids. But I want to ask just one final question here.
Yeah.
In Mexico.
Yeah.
Are musicians? Here's the bottom line. You had a good run in Southern California, no doubt. Played music, had fun. In Mexico, where you're at, are musicians seen as viable professions? Or because in this country, in the States, more and more, it's, in my mind, music, they look at it and they say, because of the unquantifiable nature of music and how magical it is, you can't quantify it. So it's like, oh, music is a musician's gift to the world. So you can play for the door, you can pay to play. And it's not, it's been denigrated, especially when you look back from the 1950s, go back 70 years or something. And I just wonder, how are musicians viewed where you're at now? Are they seen as a viable profession?
Well, it's only seen as a viable profession when they see you're playing on big stages. But
Wow.
It is a viable profession. It's not an easy profession. I think it's kind of in the same way as there, like it doesn't really change. As far as location, it's just more a society kind of thing, and depends on the it depends on the circle you're in. I'm sure if you go and meet this business dudes, politicians or whatever, it's like, well, what do you do? Oh, I'm a musician. Oh, okay.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm talking about, is the idea, like, are there, and this might just be naive, but it's like, I mean, part of it's luck, okay? Like that's
there's definitely luck.
Yeah.
There's definitely being prepared when you get those opportunities.
Darn right.
I've been given opportunities, and I've just honestly, like this, to give you the listen, the first, that tour that I'm telling you, that so I said, we want to do this tour. They came to me and they said, you're going to play is mainly percussion, a little bit of keyboards, and a little bit less of guitar. And when they sent me the tracks of the tour, it was literally, and I'm not kidding you, it was like 50% guitar, 30% keyboard, 20%. It was like completely
the pie
inverse.
chart. Yeah, absolutely.
And and I could have just been like, holy shit, I can't do this. And you know what I did? And I'm not kidding, and they know this, and everybody knows it. I literally just my roommate was this guy, Patrick O'Connor, who plays guitar with Shaky Graves, and I literally just grabbed the first song of the set, and first day, and I would just play it on repeat until I could actually play the guitar part. And if I had a problem, I would go, hey Patrick, how should I play this? Because I'm mostly ear trained.
Patrick, man.
As far as this stuff, and Patrick would just, oh well, yeah, try this, and what I did is I had a month more or less, and I literally played day one, and I'm not kidding you, man, like 6 hours of the same song on repeat. And then day two would be song one and song two and repeat. Wow. And then day three would be, and it's just a matter of like, hey, I got this opportunity. Instead of being like, whoa, I don't know, I'll be like, I'm just gonna do it. I'm gonna do it. And that's the other part of it, like if you actually, I was lucky enough to get the opportunity, but I had to do the work, and it's doable.
No, I mean, it's both and. It's, when an open door comes your way, there is preparation that is involved. And then once all that stuff starts to when you get in the flow, you guys are, you make things look easy, which is the definition of genius, which is making something look that is difficult look very easy. But it takes a lot of preparation. And Pipe, man, we'll get on this next week. Maybe do set 2 next week if you got some time. All right, we'll figure it out. But yeah, man, we're gonna get you back to the States, and it's gonna be Carnival full time.
Yeah, man.
All right,
Jake.
Much love, Pipe.
Yeah, you too, man.
Be cool, man. Great to hang with you. I'll get this up later.
Okay, man.
All right, peace. Yep.
Bye.
A couple of home runs today. Nico Gioris and Pipe Ceballos. That's it for the Jake Feinberg Show. We will see you later.